The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers gleamed under the light of 3 distant suns. Inside, representatives from dozens of species sat in circular rows, their forms as varied as the worlds they came from. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Vex Torlin, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. His scaled hide reflected the chamber's light as he spoke with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. "Honored council members," Vex began, his voice echoing through translation devices. "Humanity has expanded too far, too fast. They claim territories that rightfully belong to older, more established civilizations. They refuse to follow the ancient protocols that have maintained peace for millennia." Dr. Elena Vasquez sat quietly in the human delegation section, her dark eyes focused on the towering alien. Beside her, Captain Rex Morgan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Both humans looked small compared to the other species around them, but Elena's calm expression never wavered. Council Prime Nala Quinn, ancient, even by her species' standards, raised one webbed hand. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. "Ambassador Torlin, what solution does the Hegemony Coalition propose? We have reviewed the territorial disputes. Human expansion has followed all established protocols." Vex's 4 eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. "The humans hide behind their paperwork and treaties, but they lack true strength. We propose a trial by combat, as is our ancient right. Let them send their greatest warrior to face ours. When they lose, they will withdraw from all disputed territories." A murmur ran through the chamber. Trial by combat was an old tradition, rarely used in modern times. Elena felt Rex tense beside her, but she remained perfectly still. She had expected this. "And if humanity refuses?" asked Council Prime Quinn. "Then they prove they are cowards as well as thieves," Vex replied. "Either way, the galaxy will see them for what they truly are." Elena stood slowly. Her movement was graceful, deliberate. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the small human female. "The Hegemony Coalition may invoke trial by combat if they wish," she said, her voice clear and steady. "However, we request the right to choose the terms." Vex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You wish to choose the terms of your own defeat? Very well, human. What are your conditions?" "We ask that your champion face our weakest warrior, not our strongest." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Even Rex turned to stare at Elena in shock. Vex's laughter grew louder. "Your weakest? You mock this ancient tradition?" "Not at all," Elena replied calmly. "You claim humans are weak? Prove it by defeating our weakest representative. If you cannot, then your claims are false." Council Prime Quinn's ancient features creased in thought. "This is unusual. Ambassador Torlin, do you accept these terms?" Vex's confidence was absolute. "If the humans wish to send a child or an invalid to face our greatest champion, so be it. We accept their terms." "Very well," said Council Prime Quinn. "The trial will take place in 30 standard days. The location will be Kronos Prime, as is traditional for such trials." Several species in the chamber gasped. Kronos Prime was known throughout the galaxy as a death world. Its crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, and deadly wildlife had claimed the lives of countless explorers. It was the perfect place for a trial that was meant to test more than just fighting skill. Elena nodded once. "We accept." As the council session ended and representatives began filing out, Rex grabbed Elena's arm. "Are you insane? Kronos Prime will kill whoever we send before they even meet their champion." "And our weakest warrior? What are you thinking?" Elena's smile was small, but confident. "I'm thinking that the hegemony has no idea what they just agreed to." "Tell me, Rex, what do you know about human evolutionary history?" "What does that have to do with anything?" "Everything," Elena said, watching as Vex Torlin strutted from the chamber, his 4 arms raised in premature victory. "The hegemony sees humans as weak because we're not the biggest, fastest, or strongest species in the galaxy. They've studied our military footage, our enhanced soldiers, our technology. But they've never studied what makes us human in the first place." Rex frowned. "Elena, you're starting to worry me." Don't worry, she said, gathering her documents. Contact command. Tell them we need to find someone very specific. Not a soldier, not an athlete, not a genius. We need someone completely ordinary. Ordinary. By human standards, yes. The hegemony wants to face our weakest warrior. They have no idea that our weakest warrior is still something the galaxy has never seen before. As they walked through the corridors of the station, Rex struggled to understand. What exactly are you planning? Elena paused at a viewing port that showed the swirling colors of the nebula beyond. The hegemony believes that strength comes from genetic enhancement, from technology, from size and speed. They've bred and modified their champion to be the perfect killing machine. But they've never encountered something that evolution spent millions of years perfecting, which is a human being, Elena said simply. Not enhanced, not modified, not trained beyond normal limits, just a regular human doing what humans do best. And what's that? Elena's smile grew wider. Surviving. Rex felt a chill run down his spine, though he couldn't say why. Elena, what aren't you telling me? Contact the agricultural colonies, she said, turning away from the window. Find someone young, healthy, but completely average. Someone who's never been in the military, never had combat training, never been enhanced in any way. Find someone who represents baseline humanity. You want to send a farmer to fight on a death world? I want to send a human to do what humans have been doing since we first walked out of Africa, Elena replied. I want to watch the galaxy learn why we're called the persistence predators. Rex stared at her for a long moment. You really think this will work? I think the hegemony has made the same mistake that every predator on Earth made when they first encountered early humans. They think we look weak, so we must be weak. They think because we're not immediately threatening, we're not dangerous. At all, as they reached the human quarters, Elena turned to Rex one final time. The hegemony asked to fight our weakest warrior. They're about to learn that there's no such thing as a weak human. There are only humans who haven't been pushed hard enough yet. Rex nodded slowly, beginning to understand. As Elena disappeared into her quarters to begin making the necessary calls, he found himself almost feeling sorry for the hegemony's champion, almost. The morning sun cast long shadows across the golden wheat fields of New Montana. Jake Reeves wiped sweat from his forehead as he guided the old harvester through another row of grain. At 19, he had the lean build of someone who worked hard. Every day but never pushed himself to extremes. His hands were calloused from farm work, his skin tanned from long hours under the sun, but there was nothing remarkable about him by human standards. Maria Santos watched him from the edge of the field, her weathered face thoughtful. At 55, she had traded her military uniform for farm clothes 20 years ago, but her eyes still held the sharp awareness of someone who had seen real combat. When the call had come from Earth Command, she had almost laughed. Then she had watched Jake work for a full day, and her laughter had died. The harvester's engine coughed and died. Jake climbed down and popped the hood, his movements efficient and unhurried. Within minutes, he had identified the problem, improvised a temporary fix using wire and tape, and had the machine running again. Maria smiled. That was exactly what they needed. Jake, she called out as he climbed back onto the harvester. Come here a minute. He shut off the engine and jogged over, his breathing barely elevated despite the morning's work. What's up, Maria? The Northfield giving you trouble? Again? No, nothing like that. Maria studied his face, seeing the quiet intelligence behind his friendly expression. How would you like to take a trip? Jake laughed. A trip? Maria, it's harvest season. Dad would kill me if I left now. What if I told you it was important? Really important? Something in her tone made Jake pause. Maria had never been one for jokes or exaggeration. Important how? Before Maria could answer, a military transport landed in the field behind them, kicking up clouds of dust. Jake stared as uniformed officers emerged. Led by a stern-looking woman with general stars on her collar, General Patricia Hayes approached them with quick, efficient steps. Miss Santos, I'm General Hayes. We spoke yesterday. Maria nodded. General? This is Jake Reeves. Hayes studied Jake with the same intensity she might use to examine a piece of advanced technology. Mr. Reeves, your planet needs you. Jake looked between Maria and the general, confusion clear on his face. I'm sorry, what? I think there's been some mistake. I'm just a farmhand. No mistake, said Dr. Marcus Webb, emerging from behind the general. The xenobiologist was a thin man with excited eyes. You're exactly what we're looking for, which is? Dr. Webb's enthusiasm was barely contained. A completely normal human being. Jake's confusion deepened. I don't understand. General Hayes stepped forward. Son, humanity has been challenged to trial by combat by an alien coalition. The fate of our expansion into space depends on the outcome. Okay, Jake said slowly. So you need soldiers, elite fighters. Special forces. No, Maria said quietly. They asked to fight our weakest warrior. Jake stared at her. And you think, that's me? By human standards, you're completely average, Dr. Webb explained. Normal strength, normal speed, normal intelligence, but that's exactly why you're perfect. I'm not following. General Hayes gestured to Dr. Webb. Doctor, explain. Doctor. Webb pulled out a tablet and began showing images. Jake, what do you see here? The screen showed various alien species. Jake studied them thoughtfully. Well, that one looks like it's built for power. Heavy bone structure, big muscles. That one's probably fast, based on the leg muscles, and that one... He paused, studying a particularly fearsome-looking creature. That one's designed to kill things efficiently. Exactly right, Dr. Webb said excitedly. Now look at this. He showed an image of a baseline human. What do you see? Jake shrugged. Just a regular person, nothing special. Wrong, Dr. Webb said firmly. You see the most successful persistence predator in the galaxy. You see a species that can outrun a horse over long distances, survive in almost any environment, adapt to any challenge, and never ever give up. But I'm not a fighter. You don't need to be, Maria said. Jake, remember last winter when the blizzard knocked out power to the settlement? Yeah, we had to keep the livestock alive for 6 days until the repair crews could get through. You worked 18-hour shifts in sub-freezing temperatures. You didn't sleep more than 3 hours at a time. You improvised heating systems from spare parts. You kept 200 people alive. Jake frowned. That's just what needed to be done. Exactly, General Hayes said. That's what makes humans. Dangerous. We do what needs to be done. Dr. Webb leaned forward eagerly. Jake, the alien champion, is a genetically enhanced warrior from the Hegemony Coalition. He's 3 meters tall, has enhanced strength and speed, and has been trained from birth to kill. He's everything that evolution and technology can create to make the perfect fighter. And you want me to fight him? We want you to do what humans do, Maria said. Survive, adapt, endure. General Hayes activated her own tablet. The combat takes place on Kronos Prime. Gravity is twice Earth normal. Atmosphere is toxic. Temperature swings from scorching during the day to freezing at night. There are predators, acid rain, unstable terrain, and a dozen other things that can kill you. Jake studied the information, his farm-trained mind automatically. Analyzing the challenges, water sources, scattered. Most are contaminated. Shelter materials, minimal. Mostly native plants and rock formations. Food, native fauna and flora. Most of it's poisonous to other species, Jake nodded slowly. So it's a survival situation. How long? 72 hours and the alien champion? We'll be hunting you the entire time. Jake was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. Maria watched him think, seeing the same careful consideration he used when planning crop rotations or managing livestock. What happens if I lose? Humanity loses territorial claims throughout this sector, General Hayes sighed. We'll be pushed back to our core systems, and if I win, the Hegemony Coalition backs down. We prove that humans belong in space. Jake looked at the tablet again, studying the hostile world where the trial would take place. This Kronos Prime. It's basically a harder version of the challenges we face here during harsh seasons. Much harder, Dr. Webb said. But the same basic problems. Shelter, water, food, staying alive while something tries to kill you. Yes, Jake handed the tablet back to General Hayes. When do we leave? Maria smiled for the first time that day. Just like that? You said the planet needs me. You said people are counting on this, Jake shrugged. That's enough, General Hayes nodded approvingly. We leave in 6 hours. You'll have basic training during the flight. As the military personnel began preparing for departure, Maria pulled Jake aside. You understand what you're agreeing to? I think so. The aliens think humans are weak because we're not obviously dangerous. They want to prove it by beating our weakest fighter. And? Jake smiled, and for a moment Maria saw something that reminded her of her old military days. It wasn't bloodthirst or eagerness for violence. It was the calm confidence of someone who had faced impossible situations before and found a way through. They have no idea what weak means, Jake said. They think weak means easy to kill. But sometimes weak just means you've learned how to bend instead of break. The dropship shuddered as it entered Kronos Prime's atmosphere. Jake pressed his face to the small window and watched the alien landscape roll beneath them. Dark purple vegetation covered rolling hills while steam rose from what looked like vast swamps. In the distance, mountains pierced the cloudy sky like broken teeth. First time seeing a death world? Asked the pilot, a grizzled veteran named Tom Brady. First time off-planet at all, Jake replied, his voice steady despite the ship's violent shaking. It looks like home during storm season, just more colorful. Tom laughed. Kid, this place makes the worst Earth storm look like a gentle breeze. The gravity alone will crush most species. Jake felt the increasing pull as they descended. His body grew heavier with each passing minute, but his expression remained calm. He had spent years hauling heavy farm equipment and working in Earth's varied climates. This was just another challenge. The ship landed on a rocky plateau overlooking a vast wilderness. Jake stepped out onto the surface and immediately felt the planet trying to kill him. The air burned his lungs despite his breathing mask. The gravity made every step feel like he was carrying a full grain sack. The temperature. Readings on his suit showed it was hot enough to cook meat. Welcome to Kronos Prime, boomed a voice from above. Jake looked up to see Arena Master Zin, a floating jellyfish-like creature whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Around the plateau, dozens of alien spectators watched from climate-controlled viewing boxes. Their excited chatter filled the air as translation devices worked overtime. The rules are simple, Zin announced. 2 warriors enter the wilderness. 72 hours later, the survivor claims victory. There are no other restrictions. A massive transport landed on the opposite side of the plateau. When the doors opened, Jake got his first look at his opponent. Král Vorthak was everything. The briefings had described and worse. 3 meters of engineered muscle and bone stepped onto the rocky ground. His hide was mottled green and black, perfect camouflage for the environment. Enhanced arms ended in claws that could tear through metal. His eyes glowed with predatory intelligence. The alien crowd roared its approval as Král raised his arms in triumph. Betting displays around the viewing area showed odds of 1,000 to 1 against the human. Look at him, wheezed news anchor Blix Thornton into his recording device. The human appears to be a juvenile of his species. Barely 2 meters tall, no visible enhancements, no natural weapons. This may be the shortest trial by combat in galactic history. Jake ignored the commentary and focused on studying his opponent. Král's movements were powerful but heavy. His enhanced muscles would consume energy quickly. His size would make him unstable on uneven terrain. Most importantly, his confidence was absolute. He expected an easy victory. Arena Master Zin's voice echoed across the plateau. Warriors, you have 1 hour to prepare before entering the wilderness. Use it wisely. Jake walked to the edge of the plateau and looked down at the landscape below. He could see several distinct environmental zones, the purple forests, the steaming swamps, rocky badlands, and what looked like acid pools in the distance. His farming background helped him read the terrain like a map. Water would flow from the mountains toward the swamps. The forests would provide shelter but also hide predators. The Badlands would be exposed but easier to navigate. Kral Vorthek was checking his equipment. Advanced armor covered his vital areas. Energy weapons hung from his belt. Medical injectors lined his arms, ready to heal wounds or boost performance. He had come prepared for war. Jake's equipment was much simpler. Basic environmental suit, water purification tablets, emergency rations for one day, a simple knife, and rope. Everything else he would have to improvise. Attention spectators, Blix Thornton continued his commentary. The Hegemony Champion has just completed his equipment check. Advanced healing systems, enhanced weaponry, and armor rated to withstand plasma fire. Meanwhile, the human appears to be carrying farming tools. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched from the human observation box, her hands clenched tightly. Captain Rex Morgan stood beside her, his face grim. "Elena, tell me you know what you're doing," Rex whispered. "Look at him," Elena replied, pointing at Jake. "Really look," Rex studied the young farmer. Jake was methodically checking his gear, but his eyes never stopped moving. He was cataloging everything: wind patterns, the position of the suns, the behavior of flying creatures in the distance, the sound of something large moving in the forest below. "He's not preparing for a fight," Elena said softly. "He's preparing to survive." The hour passed quickly. Arena Master Zin's voice boomed across the plateau. "Warriors, enter the arena." Two paths led down from the plateau, one toward the forest and one toward the swamps. Kral Vorthok chose the forest path, his powerful legs carrying him quickly into the purple vegetation. Jake chose the swamp path, moving at a steady, sustainable pace. "Interesting choice by the human," Blix reported. "He's heading directly into the most dangerous terrain on the planet. Acid swamps, predatory plants, and unstable ground await him." Jake reached the edge of the swamp as the first of Kronos Prime's 3 suns began to set. The air grew even more toxic, and steam rose from pools of bubbling liquid. He knelt beside a relatively clear pool and tested the water with his purification tablets. Acidic, but manageable with the right treatment. He found a cluster of rocks that formed a natural shelter and began setting up his first camp. Within minutes, he had identified 3 escape routes and located materials for basic tools. The rocks would reflect heat during the cold night hours. A small overhang would protect him from the acid rain that his weather sense told him was coming, miles away. Kral Vorthok was making his own camp in the forest. His armor kept him comfortable, and his enhanced metabolism meant he needed little rest. He would begin hunting the human at first light. As the night grew darker, Jake heard the sounds of Kronos of Prime coming alive. Roars echoed from the forest. Where his opponent waited, splashing sounds came from deeper in the swamp, where things moved that had never been cataloged by galactic science. The acid rain began to fall, just as Jake had predicted. He settled back against the rocks, his breathing steady despite the hostile environment. Tomorrow, the real trial would begin. Kral Vorthok would come hunting, armed with superior technology and enhanced abilities. But Jake had something his opponent lacked: the patient endurance of a species that had once hunted mammoths to extinction using nothing but persistence and clever thinking. In the viewing boxes above, betting odds remained firmly against the human. But Dr. Elena Vasquez smiled as she watched Jake settle in for the night. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humans. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous predator was the one that didn't look dangerous at all. The trial by combat had begun, and Jake Reeves was exactly where a human belonged, in an impossible situation with no obvious way out. It was time to do what his species did best. Dawn broke over Kronos Prime with the rising of 2 suns, casting long purple shadows across the swampland. Jake had been awake for an hour, quietly observing the rhythm of the alien ecosystem as it shifted from night to day. Predatory flowers that had glowed in the darkness were now closing their petals. Creatures that hunted in the cool night were retreating to whatever shelters they could find. Jake packed his simple gear and began moving deeper into the swamp. His pace was steady and efficient, the same rhythm he used when walking the boundary of his family's farm. Behind him, his temporary shelter showed no signs of recent occupation. He had learned long ago to leave no trace that might attract unwanted attention. 3 kilometers away, Král Vorthek emerged from his forest camp like a force of nature. His enhanced senses immediately picked up traces of the human's passage. Scent markers, disturbed vegetation, and the faint heat signature from his overnight camp painted a clear trail. The alien warrior's confidence grew. Tracking such an obvious target would be simple. Král began his pursuit with the measured pace of a predator certain of its victory. His enhanced legs carried him quickly through the terrain, and his armor systems automatically adjusted to environmental changes. Within 2 hours he had covered the distance to Jake's abandoned camp. "Primitive shelter," he growled to himself, studying the arrangement of rocks and simple weather protection. The human has no real survival skills. What Král failed to notice was that Jake's trail from the camp split in 3 directions, each path carefully obscured to look accidental. The human had spent an hour before dawn creating false trails, using techniques learned from tracking livestock through muddy fields. Jake was now moving parallel to the swamp's edge, staying in the difficult terrain where his opponent's size and weight would work against him. His environmental suit's readings showed dangerous levels of toxicity in the air, but his modified filters were holding. More importantly, he was learning the patterns of this alien world. The native creatures were fascinating from a farmer's perspective. Large herbivores moved in herds, following paths that avoided the most dangerous acid pools. Predators hunted from ambush points near water sources. The ecosystem had rules, just like any environment, and Jake was beginning to understand them. Král's first mistake came when he chose the wrong trail to follow. His enhanced hearing picked up movement ahead, and he charged forward, expecting to catch his prey off guard. Instead, he found himself face to face with a territorial creature that resembled a cross between a bear and a lobster. The beast's acid-resistant hide and powerful claws made it one of the swamp's apex predators. The fight was brief but violent. Král's weapons and enhancements made him the victor, but the encounter cost him energy and time. Worse, the noise of combat echoed across the swampland, alerting every creature within kilometers to his presence. Jake heard the sounds of battle from his position 2 ridges away. He paused, listening carefully to the rhythm of roars and energy weapon discharges. When silence returned, he adjusted his course again, using the noise to triangulate his opponent's position while staying well clear of the immediate area. "Clever," he murmured to himself, but loud. The second day passed in a deadly game of cat and mouse. Král followed what he believed was Jake's trail, but the human stayed consistently ahead, always choosing terrain that favored endurance over speed. When Král tried to take shortcuts through open ground, Jake used narrow passages between acid pools. When Král attempted to use his enhanced senses to track from high ground, Jake moved through areas where the swamp's natural toxins masked his scent. By midday, Král was beginning to feel the strain. His enhanced metabolism required more fuel than his supplies could provide indefinitely. The hostile environment was wearing on his equipment. Several of his advanced systems were showing the effects of prolonged exposure to acidic air and extreme temperature variations. Jake, meanwhile, had found his rhythm. The heavy gravity was no longer a burden, but simply another factor to account for, like working in mud during spring planting. The toxic air was manageable with proper filter maintenance. Most importantly, he was learning to read Cronus primes. Weather patterns. The storm hit late in the afternoon with the fury of a world trying to eliminate all life from its surface. Acid rain fell in sheets, driven by winds that could knock down trees. Lightning split the purple sky, and the temperature dropped 40 degrees in minutes. Král sought shelter in a cave formation, his armor protecting him from the worst of the storm's effects. His tracking systems went offline as the electromagnetic interference overwhelmed his sensors. For the first time since the trial began, he felt a flicker of concern. Jake was already prepared. He had seen the storm building hours earlier and had positioned himself in a shallow depression lined with native plants whose waxy leaves shed acid rain naturally. He wrapped himself in emergency sheeting and settled in to wait, his breathing Slow and steady. This was familiar territory, farmer. Weather was not an enemy to be fought, but a force to be endured and worked around. Storms passed. Seasons changed. The key was patience. As night fell and the storm continued to rage, Jake began to move. Not away from his opponent, but toward him. The storm would mask his approach, and Kral's technological advantages would be diminished by the electromagnetic interference. He found Kral's shelter just after midnight. The alien warrior was huddled in his cave, armor systems struggling to maintain optimal temperature. His enhanced senses were useless in the storm's chaos. For the first time in his life, Kral Vorthak was experiencing what it meant to be vulnerable. Jake studied his opponent from a distance, noting the signs of stress and discomfort. The alien's breathing was labored. His movements showed the careful stiffness of someone fighting exhaustion. Most telling of all, his constant checking of equipment indicated growing anxiety about system failures, but Jake didn't attack. Instead, he settled into a hidden position and waited. Patience was a human strength that the galaxy had never properly understood. While other species sought quick victories through superior force or technology, humans had learned the power of simply outlasting their problems. The storm passed near dawn, leaving the swampland steaming under the rising suns. Kral emerged from his shelter to find that his tracking equipment was damaged and his food supplies were running dangerously low. Worse, he had no idea where his quarry had gone. Jake was already moving, following a route he had planned during the long night of observation. His opponent was weakening, growing desperate. Soon, Kral would start making the kind of mistakes that turned hunters into prey. The human's trail appeared again, seemingly random movements through dangerous terrain. But Jake was no longer simply evading pursuit. He was leading his opponent exactly where he wanted him to go, toward a section of the swamp where the acid pools were deeper and the stable ground was limited to narrow paths. Kral followed eagerly, his hunger for victory overriding his tactical sense. The trail was fresher now, and he could almost sense his prey just ahead. His enhanced legs carried him faster through the treacherous terrain. Closing the distance with each passing hour, he never noticed that he was being herded like livestock toward a place where all his advantages would mean nothing, and the patient endurance of a human farmer would finally tip the scales of this ancient trial. The third day began with Jake exactly where he wanted to be and Kral exactly where Jake had led him. The alien warrior stood at the edge of a narrow causeway between two massive acid pools, his enhanced sensors finally detecting strong traces of his human quarry. After 2 days of frustration, Kral's patience had evaporated along with his food supplies. Jake watched from a concealed position as his opponent studied the dangerous path ahead. The causeway was barely 2 meters wide, with unstable ground on both sides that could collapse into pools of acid hot enough to dissolve metal. For someone of Kral's size and weight, it represented a serious risk, but hunger and desperation drove the alien warrior forward. His enhanced strength was meaningless if he couldn't catch his prey, and every hour of delay brought him closer to exhaustion. Kral stepped onto the narrow path, his heavy footsteps causing small chunks of rock to break away and splash into the acid below. Jake began moving parallel to the causeway, staying hidden in the vegetation while maintaining visual contact with his opponent. He had spent hours the previous day testing this route, learning which sections were stable and which were likely to collapse under stress. Knowledge that Kral lacked. Halfway across the causeway, Kral's enhanced hearing picked up movement in the bush ahead. His predatory instincts flared, and he increased his pace, causing more of the unstable ground to crumble away. The human was close now, very close. Jake emerged from concealment 50 meters ahead, standing calmly on solid ground beyond the causeway. For the first time in 3 days, the two opponents could see each other clearly. Kral roared in triumph and charged forward, his powerful legs driving him toward what he expected to be an easy kill. The human looked exhausted, his simple equipment showing signs of wear from the harsh environment. This was the moment Kral had been anticipating, but Jake didn't run. Instead, he began moving backward at the same steady pace he had maintained for 3 days. Not the panicked flight of prey, but the measured withdrawal of someone executing a plan. Crow reached the end of the causeway and leaped onto solid ground, his claws extended and weapons ready. The human was just meters away now. Finally, within reach of his enhanced speed and strength, the ground beneath Crow's feet gave way. Jake had spent precious time and energy the previous evening weakening the apparently solid ground where the causeway met the shore. What looked like stable rock was actually a thin shell over another acid pool. Carefully disguised to appear safe, Crow plunged into the acidic water with a splash that echoed across the swampland. His armor protected him from immediate dissolution, but the caustic liquid began eating through seals and joints. Worse, his enhanced weight made it impossible to climb out of the steep-sided pool without assistance. Jake approached the edge carefully, staying well back from the unstable rim. He looked down at his opponent, who was struggling to keep his head above the surface while his armor systems flashed emergency warnings. "Help me," Crow gasped, his translator struggling to function in the acidic environment. "Please." This was the moment that defined everything. Jake could walk away and let Kronos Prime finish what he had started. The trial would be over, humanity would be victorious, and no one would question his choice. His opponent had come here to kill him, after all. Instead, Jake uncoiled the rope from his pack. "Grab this," he called out, throwing one end down to the struggling alien. "But try to kill me when I pull you out, and I'll let you sink." Crow's pride warred with his survival instinct for several seconds before desperation won. He grasped the rope with both hands, his enhanced strength nearly pulling Jake into the pool before the human braced himself properly. The extraction took nearly an hour. Jake used a combination of leverage, patience, and carefully placed anchor points to slowly winch the much larger alien out of the acid pool. By the time Crow collapsed on solid ground, both warriors were exhausted. Jake sat down heavily several meters away, his simple knife within easy reach but not drawn. "Your armor's compromised," he observed calmly. "Life support systems are failing. You've got maybe 6 hours before the environment kills you." Crow stared at him through the cracked visor of his helmet. "Why?" he wheezed. "Why help me?" "Because that's what humans do," Jake replied simply. "We help." Arena Master Zin's voice boomed across the swampland from hidden speakers. "The trial is concluded. The human warrior stands victorious." In the viewing boxes high above, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The betting pools had been catastrophically wrong. The weak human had not only survived but had demonstrated a form of strength that none of them had predicted. Dr. Elena Vasquez smiled as she watched Jake help his defeated opponent to his feet. "Did you see that, Rex? That's why we sent him." "Because he's a good fighter?" "No, because he's a good human. The hegemony expected us to send someone who could kill their champion. Instead, we sent someone who chose to save him." News anchor Blix Thornton struggled to explain what he had witnessed to his galactic audience. "The human has achieved victory through— I'm not entirely sure how to describe this. He defeated a superior opponent not through strength or technology, but through persistence, cleverness, and ultimately compassion." Ambassador Vex Torlin's forearms hung limp as he watched his champion being helped to the extraction point by the human he had been sent to kill. This was not the outcome the hegemony had prepared for. Council Prime Nala. Quinn's ancient voice carried clearly through the communication system. "The trial by combat is concluded. The human warrior has proven that humanity possesses strengths that the hegemony coalition failed to recognize. The territorial disputes are resolved in humanity's favor." As rescue transports descended to collect both warriors, Jake found himself supporting much of Crow's weight. The alien's armor was failing rapidly, and his enhanced metabolism was crashing as his systems shut down. "I don't understand," Crow whispered as they waited for pickup. "You could have let me die. The trial would have been over." "The trial was already over," Jake replied. "Had been since the second day when you started making noise and wasting energy. Everything after that was just waiting for you to figure it out. But you saved me." "Yeah, I did." "Why?" Jake looked up at the alien sky, where 3 suns painted the clouds in shades of purple and gold. "Because back home, we've got a saying. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest or the most dangerous. It's about being the one still standing when everything else falls down. And sometimes that means helping others stand up too. The rescue transport landed and medical teams rushed to treat both warriors. As Jake was helped aboard, he looked back at the hostile landscape of Kronos Prime. 3 days ago, it had been an alien death world designed to kill him. Now it just looked like another challenging environment that humans would eventually find a way to live in. Dr. Elena Vasquez met him at the transport's medical bay. "How do you feel, Jake?" He thought about it for a moment, watching as alien medics worked to save Krau's life with the same dedication human doctors would show. "Tired," he said finally, ready to go home. "The harvest season isn't going to wait." "For me," Elena laughed, but there was something deeper in her expression. Pride, maybe, or vindication. "The galaxy is going to want to study you, you know. Figure out how a completely ordinary human accomplished something that their greatest warriors couldn't." Jake shrugged, already thinking about the farm work waiting for him back on New Montana. "Let them study if they want. They'll just learn what we've always known, which is, sometimes the weakest thing in the room is also the most dangerous. Not because it can destroy everything else, but because it can survive anything that tries to destroy it." As the transport lifted off from Kronos Prime, carrying news of humanity's victory to the waiting galaxy, Jake closed his eyes and began planning his next crop rotation. He had proven himself on an alien death world, but there was still work to be done at home. Behind him, Krau Vorthek watched through his medical pod's viewing window as the human who had defeated and then saved him settled in for a nap. For the first time in his enhanced life, the alien warrior was beginning to understand what the galaxy had gotten itself into when it challenged humanity. They had asked to fight Earth's weakest warrior, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had discovered that there was no such thing as a weak human, only humans who hadn't been properly motivated yet. And now the galaxy would have to learn to live with that knowledge.